Amitofo. Hello to everyone. Give me a second here. We start as usual with a bow and the four great vows. Bow, four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless fixations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Welcome to you all. We're working tonight on the perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines sutra. And this particular sutra, sometimes it's referred to in short version as the Asta Sutra. And that's short for Asta Sahasrika Prajnaparamita Sutra. And there's verses that belong to this as well, which is called the Prajnaparamita Ratnaguna Samkhya Agatha. So this particular sutra was an interesting one because it was one of the very, very first Mahayana sutras, and this one is of 8,000 lines. You've seen there's sutras that have the same name of different lines. Some of them 10,000 lines, of 15,000 lines, up to 100,000 lines. And then later on, it began to become more condensed in terms of it. And you would get these shortened versions of it that you'd have these very small sutras, such as the Diamond Sutra coming out of this, and the Heart Sutra that were coming out of this as well. And those were kind of, I guess, bite-sized pieces that people could hold on to and to do, rather than trying to say, okay, I'm going to start with 8,000 lines, or it ballooned up to 100,000 lines. So obviously these were compilations as they went. Also, there was another part of this, which is that the the one that I'd mentioned, that there's verses that are set forth in here. You could say shlokas, and then there is the writing itself. The writing is in traditional classical Sanskrit, and then the verses were in a different kind of a language. It escapes me right now, but it was kind of this combination where you'll see in some sutras that you have the discussion of the Buddha Dharma, and then somebody, generally it's the Buddha or it could be some bodhisattva, then speaks in verses, or in this kind of almost like a singing form. You could say very much similar to when you do the morning and evening services, where you're singing the particular parts of the service. And so it's kind of interesting, and I'm just kind of giving you this as a background. This particular sutra came in around the first century BC, and was one of the first ones to be translated somewhere in the first century AD into Chinese. Again, this was at an opening of Mahayana in terms of presenting a version of Buddha Dharma that was all inclusive. And before we started, I was speaking with Sentha about, and she's studying the Lotus Sutra, and she was talking about how that Thich Nhat Hanh was discussing that in his commentary of the Lotus Sutra, that this was a necessity or essential for the preservation of Buddha Dharma, because in the Theravadan, it wasn't completely all inclusive, and it was more emphasized towards the practice, especially the practice of the monastics and male monastics, whereas Mahayana opened it wide up to everyone, and so it made it more marketable in terms of a practice where everybody is included. and it removed the idea, the stigma of each and each, where if you committed one of the five, let's say, mortal sins, you could not become a Buddha. And in that way, it was kind of making everything kind of fit together. I was talking about how that in the Theravada there were parts that didn't quite fit, where you're saying, well, what about lay people? What about women? What about this? And they don't quite fit in there. And then all of a sudden, Mahayana went like this, and it all clicked together, and it brought forth um, a um, a wonderful symmetry in terms of how things are are um, are practiced, and how Buddha Dharma is established. The difficult part at this point, because it was a lot easier to say that in the Theravadan way, everything is real, because then you say, well, look around you, everything is real. But when you say everything isn't real, nor is it unreal, then you get into an area where it is tricky. There's nothing there for a person to get a firm foundation in samsara and expound upon this dharma via words, uh, because it requires an exploration of the sutras, and a as a demarcation point to jump into the Mahayana Buddha Dharma, which is can be understood in samsara as this profound wisdom, but that profound wisdom is simply the platform upon which Mahayana then enables the practitioner to be released. But it is the practitioner that has to take that next step. And so this is one of the very openings. And just imagine this, that this is right in the very beginning, the cusp of the change between Theravada and Mahayana, and they're speaking a different language here. And so, in the speaking of a different language, they have to establish the theory, the doctrine, and the language itself in which to work on this, because it isn't Theravadan. It isn't the way the Theravadins spoke. And so the Theravadins, being what was called the study of the elders, they said this is what the Buddha taught. And so then they stopped, and then Mahayana continued on, and they still said, well, this is what the Buddha taught, even up to this day. But when you look at this and Mahayana, it's not necessarily a recreation of Buddha Dharma. It is an exploration of what the Buddha taught. And in looking into it and the intent of the Buddha, and is consistent with the premises that the Buddha taught from, where Theravada kind of stops at this idea of nirvana and kind of getting out of town, versus this new aspect of Buddha Dharma. Does anybody know what this new aspect of Buddha Dharma was that came with Mahayana? Give you double points if you can answer. Anybody? Sam's always a brave one. Yes, Sam.
Buddha nature.
Emptiness.
Somebody else was saying something? All right.
Emptiness.
Emptiness? Okay. Those are both good ones. Anybody else? Something different that changed it from Theravada to Mahayana. Some emphasis.
Bodhisattva path?
There you go. The Bodhisattva. The other two answers are good answers. Okay. But here, because we're going to talk about this in this chapter 1, it is this Bodhisattva path that's important. It is not simply just leaving to go to nirvana, but the very fact that one is coursing through the samsaric world without being tainted by it or affected by the appearances within it, and also establishing in its own way the appearances that should be there. So it doesn't negate samsara and says it's not real, it's just a dream, which it is, it's a dream. But the reality is that it's a dream within mind. So we cannot completely discount it, but we cannot say that it is mind, it is a creation of mind. And it is this idea where a bodhisattva is looking at it, and this is the part that has to be understood, and therefore the platform has to be formed, which is that as one looks at things, it is mind that sees this from this idea of a gnosis, this knowing aspect of mind that looks into mind and sees mind as it is, without the idea of a self or even delivering a life and being. Even though the function is there, it is understood that it's just simply the eradication of the dream world within mind, insofar as it is attaching to appearances and therefore causing suffering. This was the big change that was there. And yes, and it is the nature of the mind to do that. So the Buddha nature is correct, and it's the emptiness. But this emptiness, we'll see, we'll have to talk about that, because that emptiness is a very unique type of emptiness. Okay, so let's get to it. If you can put up the first part. Well, we're going to start, but I copied some pages to have you follow along to make it a little easier. So this is the first page, and then this is the title of it: "The Perfection of the Wisdom" on 8,000 lines, and you see it's verse summary. So the verses also accompany the 8,000 lines. But in any case, the first part is very, very important, because it is this what any presenter of the Dharma will say, and it goes, call forth as much as you can of love, of respect, of faith. Remove the obstructing defilements and clear away all of your taints. Listen to the perfect wisdom of the gentle Buddha, taught for the weal of the world, for heroic spirits intended. So the wheel of the world it's taught for all of you. Like the wheel is that which is a nourishment, and especially a nourishment for those that are budding bodhisattvas. It's taught for you so that you can obtain this great heroic experience of a bodhisattva. And I'll go through the next part a little bit quicker, but it says, the rivers all run from Rose Apple Island, which they cause flowers to grow, fruits, herbs, and trees. They all derive the might of the king of the Nagas, from the dragon residing in the lake Anupatapa, his magical power. Just so, whatever dharmas the Jina disciples established, you're going to see Jina here, Jina, and that just refers to the Buddha. So it's saying that whatever the teachings of the Buddha's disciples are established, whatever they teach, whatever adroitly they explain, so whatever they explain very clearly, concerning the work of the holy, which leads to the fullness of bliss, and also the fruit of this work, it is the Tathagata's doing. So it's saying this is coming from the Buddha. This is a very important premise here. And it's saying this is what the Buddha taught. This is what the Buddha put into motion, not necessarily what the Buddha taught, but this is what the Buddha intended. More than just words, this is what the Buddha intended to put across to all sentient beings, is what is going to be said in this particular sutra. So it's very important, because otherwise the Theravadins are going to say, oh, well, this this is not what the Buddha taught, in which they said anyway. But here they're saying this is intended, what the Buddha was appeared in this world to do. So then we get to for whatever the Jina has taught, the guide to the Dharma, his pupils, if genuine, have well been trained in it. From direct experience derived from their training. So this direct experience, this is where we say we jump into the void, or this gnosis. So this direct experience, it comes from the training of Buddha Dharma, especially Mahayana practice, and they teach it. Their teaching stems but from the might of the Buddhas, and not from their own power. Again, there's a clarification here saying we're Mahayanist, we're presenting this. It is not ours. It is what the Buddha taught. So you see already politically here and theoretically, there is this establishment that this teaching is genuine, that it is not something made up or comes after the fact. The Theravadins were working on, from the first council and the second council, and this compilation of what they believed to be the Buddha Dharma, and said, they cut it off and said, okay, after this, nothing can be considered what the Buddha taught. But bear in mind, there was no writing at the time when this was all carried, verbally for such a long time. So whether or not we can establish even Buddha Vicana on the Theravadin contention of what the Buddha taught, Buddha Vicana meaning that this is established, that it's the word of the Buddha, it isn't that easy for them to make that kind of a statement, and for them to arbitrarily cut it off and say, oh, no, there's no further discussion about this. Whatever we say is correct. Anything else is just a bunch of hooey. It's not what the Buddha taught. But here, Mahayana, they're looking at this and going, hold on a second. There's some flaws in the Theravada practice that we want to address and redress, and be able to establish what the Buddha's intentions were with this. We can't just simply say, okay, this is all great and this is for all the monastics, and then how are you going to sell it to everybody else? The only way you can get in is you become a male monk. So the female nuns, too bad for them. Lay people, too bad for them. Any sentient being other than a human sentient being, too bad. No, you have to wait until you become a male monastic. So there were some problems with it. And Mahayana had this great heart that looked at the whole world and said, just as I feel suffering, there is also those who also feel suffering that may be in the ghost realm, the hell realm, the animal realm, the ashara, or even in heaven. They don't know they're suffering yet. And this applies to all of them. There is a care there, and it's important. So with this, it's important to begin with this kind of an understanding here. And so then it continues. Number 5, no wisdom can we get hold of, no highest perfection, no bodhisattva, no thought of enlightenment either. Wow, right from the very beginning, there is this appearing to be a negation of all the things that they're going to contend to do. This is interesting. Why would they do this right from the very beginning and say, all right, there is no wisdom and there isn't any highest perfection. There's not even a bodhisattva and there's no thought of enlightenment either. Why is this being said? We should not go on to the next line until we understand what's being said here. And there's very many different levels of how this comes. First, there's no wisdom, okay, nor highest perfection. You could recognize this, and now you know the source of the Heart Sutra. There is no wisdom nor any attainment. Right from the very beginning of the Prajnaparamita Sutras, in the very first presentation of Dharma, it already is saying this, saying there's no wisdom, there's no attainment, not even a bodhisattva. And we see later on the dwelling place of Manjusri. Where's the dwelling place of Manjusri? There cannot be said a place that Manjusri dwells. And in fact, we heard a couple of weeks ago where they were talking about the all of these monks, 500 monks, walked out on him because he was telling them this very same thing. There's no bodhisattva, no perfection, no wisdom, and they all walked out on him because they said they couldn't see him. And Manjusri said, "That's great. That's really good. They cannot see me. They're on the right path now." And that's why he said there's no bodhisattva there. Why is there no bodhisattva? All of this is fundamental Mahayana, Ekayana. Everything is mind. Everything, all appearances are created by mind. It cannot be said to be exist or not exist. It is this way. And then let's go to the next line then. When told of this, if not bewildered and in no way anxious, a bodhisattva courses in the well-gone's wisdom. Remember what's the first line of the Heart Sutra when the great Avalokiteshvara was coursing through the deep Prajnaparamita, right? So here is a bodhisattva coursing. What does the bodhisattva course through? This wisdom, this deep Prajnaparamita wisdom. In form, feeling, will, perception, and awareness, this is the 5 skandha. Nowhere in them they find a place to rest on. So where's the dwelling place of Manjusri? You cannot see at any locale or any feeling or any will or any perception or any so-called consciousness. Here it says awareness, but that term should be consciousness rather than awareness. And there was a notation here saying that it normally is referred to as consciousness. I don't like the use of the word awareness here simply because I use awareness for the perception from the Buddha mind versus the consciousness of the 5 skandha. And it says, nowhere can they find a place to rest on. So we can go to the next page, please. See if you can isolate on the, there we go. Okay, so we continue on. Without a home, they wander. Dharmas with a little d is phenomena, never hold them. So the phenomena cannot hold them. Phenomena includes any of the five skandha, including consciousness, nor do they grasp at them. The jinas bodhi, they are bound to gain. And here I mistakenly put arhat here, but this is referring to the Buddha's bodhi. They're bound to gain. And then it says, the wanderer Senrika, excuse me, I forgot. It was a non-Buddhist ascetic who conversations with the Buddha form one section of the Suyatthagama of the Sarvastavidians, and he raised a question to the Buddha of the true self, which he identified with the Tathagata. The Buddha told him that the Tathagata could not be found in the skandhas, outside the skandhas, or in absence of the skandhas. In a supreme act of faith, Shrenika was willing to accept the Tathagata in spite of the fact that he could not be related to any of the skandha. So here, go back to trying to focus. So in his gnosis of the truth, so when he understood what the Buddha was saying, could find no basis that the skandha had not been undone, just so a bodhisattva, when he comprehends the dharmas or the phenomena as he should, does not retire into the blessed rest. So this is important here, because even though it says these five skandha are fundamentally empty, it doesn't mean that one moves away from them and sees them as an illusion and then just rest in nirvana. It is not the function of a bodhisattva to act in this way. The function of the bodhisattva is to return into the samsaric world for the salvation of all other illusory sentient beings. And so we continue on. In wisdom, then, he dwells. So that's why they were talking about the dwelling place of Manjusri, and the dwelling place of Manjusri is in wisdom. What is this wisdom, and whose and whence he queries? So what is this wisdom that we're talking about now? Because remember, this is a whole new language. It's not the same language as before. It's not the same kind of wisdom as before. This is not a wisdom that is samsaric in nature. It is that which is used to establish the platform to be able to see through samsara, not make samsara go away, but see through it as that it is just simply a dream or a phantasm, an illusion. Nevertheless, it belongs to mind. And that's the part that's very important. So then we continue on. So he says, and then he finds that all the dharmas are entirely empty. So looking at it in this way and seeing that the five skandha are empty, he sees all phenomena then is empty. This is an important emptiness, though, but because it's not the emptiness that people normally attach to the idea of empty. It is devoid of any kind of own reality or own nature. It is Buddha nature. It appears by virtue of the Buddha nature in mind. It's inseparable, and in that way, it is fundamentally empty because it does not have a dependent or an independent origination. Excuse me, independent. So then continues, uncowed and fearless in the face of that discovery, not far from Bodhi is that Bodhi being then. So if you're fearless, if you're not cowed, is like saying that people can convince you otherwise. You talk to a Theravadan and all of a sudden the Theravadan can cow you into believing something else. I just had that recently with somebody who was talking to somebody and a Theravadan that was very eloquent but their arguments were fallacious, completely fallacious. But because the person wasn't steady in the practice of Mahayana, they were cowed into thinking, well, maybe he might be right about that. No, he wasn't right. It was just simply that you have to practice harder. You have to have the faith. You have to follow the Buddhas and study, and then you will not be cowed. You will not have a fear that you're wrong. So people can make great arguments, and then all of a sudden you wither in the face of them, just simply because that person's eloquence is better than yours, or their ability to argue is better than yours. But you have to follow the Buddhas and study, and then you will have this lion's roar. The people with fallacious arguments cannot stand before you, because using this wisdom, you'll be able to cut through it. Like the diamond cutter, the Diamond Sutra, you're able to cut through these kinds of illusory arguments that only are applicable in samsara. They only know samsara. They don't know mind. This is what this sutra is saying, is you need to know what mind is. Buddha is mind, mind is Buddha. So we continue. To course in the skandhas in form, feeling, perception, volition, and so on, and fail to consider them wisely. So if you're coursing in the five skandha and you fail to consider them wisely, you go, oh, I really need a drink. I had such a tough day today and I need a drink. And maybe your better half will say to you, you always drink after work. You drink all the time. And then you drink when you're having fun. You drink when, maybe you have a problem. You're not really looking into and considering all these appearances wisely. So whatever it is, whatever we have in terms of sufferings and everything, it is because we lack wisdom that we suffer. Or imagine these skandhas as being empty. Now, it's going the other way and saying, imagine them and saying, these skandha are empty, but this kind of emptiness is not a true emptiness. It's more of a nihilistic emptiness. And so then we go all the way to the other side, from the samsaric all the way over to this nihilistic one, and saying it's all empty. And then we start our premise of studying Buddha Dharma from a erroneous viewpoint, another erroneous viewpoint. That's why Nagarjuna was talking about it's neither existent nor non-existent. That it's actually the extinguishment of the two. So we continue. Means to course in sign. Now, oftentimes you will read in the sutras, they talk about signlessness. Signlessness means that one is not attaching to phenomena. Sign means there's a sign. No, I look at my watch and I see the time and I go, oh, it's the evening. So this is my time. But in actuality, it's just Buddha time. There's not really any true sign of time there. It is just something that we cling to. And how can we even cling to this time? In a few hours, it will be where I'm at morning time. But where you are at, maybe it's already morning time. So how do we cling to anything? And so when we course in sign, and then we are lost. The track of non-production ignored. But when he does not course in form, sensation, perception, volition, consciousness, but wanders without a home, this is Manjusri, remaining unaware of of coursing, firm in wisdom. So we are, when it says wandering, it isn't like you're just wandering around and they go up to Manjusri and say, Manjusri, where are you at? I don't know. I've been wandering since the beginning of time. I have no idea where I'm at. That's not what it means. What it means is that it is that the Manjusri appears in the world, but is not held to its illusory tenets and laws of physics and science or whatever. It Manjusri simply functions impeccably, perfectly, purely in mind, not seeing that there is a samsara there, but following the course of the wisdom of the Buddha, not the course of the five skandha. This is a very, very important distinction here in terms of reorienting the idea of how this worked. And actually, it was a reorienting because this was something that the Chinese grasped onto and understood it very, very well. This idea of this where there's no longer this clinging to an understanding of samsaric notions. Not doesn't mean that they understand everything, but they understand that there's something where to practice, what to study. So then, remaining unaware of coursing firm in wisdom, his thoughts of non-production, then the best of all the calming trances cleaves to him. So when one has a non-production, there's not the idea that a bodhisattva is producing anything or doing anything in samsara. It is by the Buddha nature that it functions. Then what it cleaves, what holds on is this calming trance, this freedom and ease of body and mind. Which is what it means. This calming trance means that one sees everything clearly. It's not as if you were like hypnotized or anything. It's that you see clearly and everything is calm. And there's times when things are happening to people and they're all scattering, yelling, doing things, but you remain calm and you understand, and you're the voice of reason at that moment. Let's all settle down. Let's see what's going on. Let's figure this out. We can figure out what's going on. Or it could be, you all need to leave this building because it's burning, or whatever it is. There's an earthquake. You need to get underneath desks or whatever, or whatever is coming up that has to be done or not to be said or said. Comes naturally because the mind is very calm. Through the bodhisattva, through that, the bodhisattva now dwells tranquil in himself. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing. You say, well, what do you mean he dwells tranquil in himself? This himself is, unfortunately, because we have to use words, what it means is the self nature of mind. That essentially a bodhisattva dwells tranquil in that, because the nature of the mind is this way. If you remember back at the very beginning verse, it says, "Listen to the perfect wisdom of the gentle Buddhas." Calm down, calm down. Listen to this. Don't get too excited. It's gentle. And so it says, his future Buddhahood assured by antecedent Buddhas. So saying because Buddhas have already come, then the Buddhahood of a Bodhisattva is assured. And this was made clear in the Diamond Sutra when the Dipankara Buddha predicted that Shakyamuni Buddha in another lifetime would become enlightened and become a Buddha. And it is in this way that we understand this, because everything is created by the mind. The Buddha nature is such that there is this Buddha nature quality to everything. It isn't something that is apart from everything else. It's inclusive of everything in this way. And so as we begin to see things, we see them clearly. This was an incredible sutra. I mean, this is the beginning of Mahayana. It's coming right out of the cradle, right out of the Buddha womb. Here it is. It's like a hot pressing of this wonderful, wonderful wisdom. Okay, we continue on. Whether absorbed in trance or whether outside, mind's not. So this trance could be like a very unexcelled samadhi, but mind's not. For of the things that they are, he knows that the essential original nature. What is the essential original nature? Everything's created by the mind. It is the Buddha nature, the self nature of mind. Coursing thus, he courses in the wisdom of the Sugatas, in the wisdom of the Buddhas. So here we see where the Heart Sutra was saying when the great Bodhisattva was coursing through the deep Prajnaparamita. Here it's saying coursing thus. He courses in the wisdom, coursing thus. There's a thusness here. What is the thusness? It is the way the mind works. When one uses the Buddha mind perception to perceive the world, there's not a duality there. It is the mind knowing mind. It is a different kind of perception. It's beyond anything that a samsaric mind or consciousness could conjure up or be able to do. No matter how much you try to think about this, you can only try to use words, but you will not be able to grasp at it, because there's nothing to grasp at. But this is important, because then you see right from the very first chapter of the very first Prajnaparamita Sutra, it's laying everything out for you. Remember, this is a whole new language. It was like somebody listening to jazz for the first time and going, well, this sounds so amazing, but I don't even know how they're doing that. I don't even know how they're playing it, but it sounds good, but I need to know how it's played. And that's what's happening here, is they're introducing the language to you and the doctrine in order for you to be able to follow along through all of the other 8,000 lines. So we continue on. Let me see. And yet he does not apprehend dharmas in which he courses. So the Buddha does not cling to any kind of phenomena at all while doing this, or a bodhisattva does not. This coursing he wisely knows as no coursing. So when it said when Avalokiteshvara was coursing through the deep prajna paramita, again, it's not a coursing because a coursing would presuppose a duality, one that is coursing through something. But as I mentioned many, many times, the mind has its root zi and root jing. The root zi is the knowing aspect of the mind, and the root jing is the dharmakaya. They are not two, they're not even one. It is just the nature of mind. Thus, there's not truly a coursing, but we use the term coursing in order to help you understand that this is different than the perception of the five skandha. This is the gnosis of mind itself, the knowing of mind. So I think I have that in the side notes there. And that is his practice of wisdom, the highest perfection, Mahayana. Mahayana here, remember, there is no Mahayana school. This is the first thing. Whoever played jazz for the first time, they went, "What's that?" "Oh, that's jazz." "Really? Who made up that name?" "I don't know." The name came later. What's that jazz? Here, it's like, what's this? Mahayana means Buddha vehicle here. And so this is the highest perfection, is this Buddha vehicle. It's no longer everything is real. It's no longer that there's all these sentient beings marching off to nirvana. Where are they going to go to? They've already explained to you, indeed, where would they go? How would they get there? They would not get there in that way. What exists not, that non-existence, the foolish imagine. So the foolish imagine, oh, this doesn't exist. And again, they fall into nihilistic conceptualization that there is nothing there. But we cannot separate out, let's say, in the ocean, the salt from the water. The nature of it is within all of that. It's permeating it. So we cannot separate out that which is non-existent from mind. Where would it go? It wouldn't be able to go anywhere. It is in mind. This is again a reorienting of how one looks at things. This is not easy. This is not something for the fearful. You have to be bold, brave to be able to look at this and see it, because it undermines the very essence of your own separate existence. And so then it says non-existence as well as existence they fashion. So in the mind, we create this duality of existence and non-existence, and we believe that this is the true Dharma. No. As dharmic facts, existence and non-existence, they are both not real. Whoa. So they say, as dharmic facts, as phenomena facts, existence and non-existent, they're not real. Whether we say they're non-existent, that's not real, or whether we say they're existent, that's not real either. Theravadins were saying everything is real. Mahayana practitioners then come in and say, hold on, let's put the brakes on that. Let's take a look at this, and it's unsupportable. Nagarjuna cut them to shreds in terms of trying to establish the reality of anything, whether it was space or time. So these are not real as a separate um, uh, phenomena. That's why he's saying as dharmic facts, as a dharmic fact, as to phenomena, they're neither real nor unreal. Non-existence as well as existence. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I think I is that where I'm sorry. You jumped on the page, so I let me go back here. A bodhisattva goes forth when wisely he knows this. Ah, okay. Um, hold on a second. I'm trying to read this. Let's see. Ah, let me go back to my own part here.
Sorry, Gilbert. I was trying to highlight the part and I jumped around. I apologize.
It's okay. It's all right. We're almost done for today. I just you're burning my eyes out now. But okay. So it says a bodhisattva goes forth when wisely he knows this. So this is very, very important because a bodhisattva proceeds on with understanding this idea of neither existence nor non-existence, but the Buddha nature. This is the gnosis of it. He knows the five skandha as like an illusion. So that's, again, the Diamond Sutra, which comes out of this wellspring of the 8,000 line sutra, where it says everything should be considered to be an illusion, a phantasm, and dream. But makes not illusion one thing and skandhas another. So there's no duality there. If freed from the notion of multiple things, he courses in peace. Then that is his practice of wisdom, the highest perfection. And I will stop there. And remember, I'm on paragraph 15 of this. I think that gave you plenty to work on, but this is so fascinating. This is the history of Buddha Dharma, especially Mahayana Dharma. It is amazing, amazing stuff. And you see where it's coming from, and you're looking back into time, like you're in a time machine, and you're right with these incredible bodhisattvas that are writing this and preparing this and going like, wow, wait till they hear this. This is totally different than what was there before. It's something different, you know. And it was like in my day and age, you know, and then we did the same thing with rap music. But in my day and age, you know, rock and roll came out, right? And all the people that from the swing era are going, that's not music. And we're going, no, that's really music. And then later on, there's all sorts of other things, and we say that's not music. But there's this incredible turning of the Dharma wheel here, incredible, that brings forth this wonderful Mahayana practice. And it's very amazing. If you see this in this way and you follow it, then any sutra you read, you're going to be able to understand it. Okay. You have to move through the sutras very, very slowly, very careful, mindful of the history behind it. Why are they saying what they're saying? What are they comparing it to? And then we see that. And once we begin to make those comparisons, then philosophically, we can understand the points that were being made. And in the practitioner aspect of it, we are able to use that as a platform to jump into the void. Jumping into the void is not jumping in, and it is letting go of any kind of a notion of an ego or a life or a being or a personality. Is just simply the absorption of all into mind. So I'll leave it there for tonight. You got plenty to work on. I'll open it up for questions. Yes, Santha, go ahead.
Thank you for this wonderful teaching, Gilbert. I just wanted to the comment the line freed from the notion of multiple things. I just wanted it's not freedom from multiple things. It's just freedom from the notion of multiple things. So I just that just struck me that it's not as though the bodhisattva is oblivious to the multiple things. Yeah.
That's where you made the leap into it, and so you see it on a much deeper level. But that's how we look at these things, and that's why we move through it slowly, because all of a sudden you catch that, but it's this slow progression through there where you see that, and then you say, yeah, because it all falls into place with the rest of what's being said. This was not something somebody just wrote up, like it is from the actual gnosis of mind that enables one to be able to write this kind of a doctrine. And remember, this is like the opening doctrine. We talked about the Heart Sutra as a manifesto, but actually that came well after this 8,000 line one came into being. So yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Good. Harry.
Hi, Gilbert. Thanks again. Great. It's nice to see this document, which I really haven't seen that much, because I just relied on the Heart Sutra. But it's really wonderful to see this. And I guess it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing, right? So, but one thing I just want to mention, I don't know what the Sanskrit is, but in the Chinese, the word that Kanzi keeps using for coursing is simply practice. Practicing in the deep prajnaparamita. So coursing is kind of a fancy word, and it can throw you off a little.
I like the word coursing versus practicing, in as much as that it connotates that there is a flow versus someone that there's a duality there that that someone is practicing. It is just simply the mind coursing through, and that distinction is a matter of life and death. Because when we say, oh, we're a practitioner, then we're giving more emphasis to the self and saying there is this self that will pass through to nirvana. I think there was and the intention there was to avoid saying practice. And I thank you for for your comment on it. I'm just kind of giving you my 2 cents.
I like coursing too. It's more mysterious.
Well,
but, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's not graspable, and that's what I think. Then you understand why they use that term, because it is one that when we course, there is this gnosis there versus somebody that's a practitioner that's trying to again build the stairway to heaven type of a practice, and they're trying to get away from that, and they're trying to say it is just in the snap of the fingers. If you see it, you see it right now. It's subitism or sudden enlightenment, and doesn't mean you're enlightened except for the fact that you're awakened to the fact that this is appearing in mind. So yeah, that it interesting. Okay, we'll go. David, you're next.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Gilbert. I was struck by maybe the last thing that you probably just said about dharmic facts, existence and non-existence are both not real. And then I believe you mentioned that Buddha nature. I don't know, but I found these results on search. Is it even possible to begin to grasp what Buddha nature means? Or is it just simply enough just to know that it is just mind, and just go from there?
As soon as you open your mouth to discuss Buddha nature, you're miles from it. But nevertheless, we still have to do that. We still have to talk about it so as to negate erroneous ideas of it. But ultimately, all of the words and phrases have to be discarded, and one has to be absorbed by the Buddha nature. I can't say that yourself is absorbed, because yourself is not even in the equation. It's just a dream. And so the more we give the self something to pass through, the further away we get from it. So use that kind of as a guidepost to abandon all kinds of conceptualization about it, and use your intuitiveness of the mind itself to
Yeah.
venture forth. Okay, you can't take your body with you, okay, or your name, but you'll fit through. Okay, Vadim.
Yes. Gilbert, thank you very much for today's teaching. It was great as always. First, Harry just almost took the comment from my mouth, because I also wanted to mention that seeing in Chinese actually means practicing. Coursing to me has always seemed a bit too abstract. Yeah, so I'm glad that I'm not the only one who sees it like that. My question is, Gilbert, I'm still not getting it. Why did the Theravadins miss all the Mahayana sutras? Because all the Mahayana sutras still begin with Ananda's saying, "Thus have I heard." I heard a version that maybe they were delivered on a different plane, and then somehow the sutras were mysteriously hidden. Then Nagarjuna or somebody else went to the depths of the ocean to retrieve them. But still, if we're talking about the human plane, to me, it's hard to refute the Theravadins' argument that, well, if they have not been recorded for some reason, then the Buddha didn't speak them, at least on the human plane. So if you could solve that for me, thank you.
Yes, bear in mind that for the first few hundred years, there was no recorded versions of what the Buddha taught. All of that was passed on. So they cannot establish veracity of that. There's no videotape, no audio recordings of the Buddha speaking. So they cannot, just by simply saying that we cut it off here and we recorded all this, so that was heard from this person, this person, this person, this person, that this is it. No, what's there is in the Mahayana versions in terms of that, because they create the idea of what the Buddha taught. And we cannot say 100% Buddha Vakana that this is an accurate record of what the Buddha taught. So it leaves it open in terms of Mahayana. As to whether or not there's Buddha Vakana and Mahayana, clearly there's all sorts of different kinds of things. Let's say even we take the Platform Sutra and say Hui Ning's Platform Sutra was probably written by Sheng, but it doesn't negate the what is written in terms of it, because as one begins to study, we see that there's a deep wisdom there. And it was what the Buddha intended. So it wasn't necessarily a devolution, or an evolution of what the Buddha taught. It's expounding on what the Buddha taught in a way that clearly brings forth the sound philosophical principles. And it is why the Mahayanas went to such a great extent to challenge the Theravada presentation of what they thought to be mind, or what they thought to be the goal of Buddhism in terms of this extinguishment. And we'll get to that further into this first chapter. This it challenges those kinds of ideas and say, this is what the Buddha taught. It was there from the very beginning. If you look at the very first teachings of the Buddha, the 12 Nidanas, all of the different sutras, from the Agutara Sutra, the Luminous Mind, all these things are already there. But the Theravadins took it at this level. Mahayana pulled it up to another level, we could say a refinement of it that could withstand scrutiny, that could withstand challenges to it. And that was important in terms of philosophically and doctrinally, but more than that, it works in that level where one discards the idea of the reality of this world. Then mind is left without any kind of a foundation within samsara. The platform then is simply somewhere in which to embark into mind itself. And so it enables one to do that and in a way which is unobstructed. And that's what's important. That was the difference. The Theravadins were kind of going, don't look at anything beyond here, because this is what no, it wasn't that way. And they don't have Buddha Vikana for what they say that's there. I mean, they're just kind of going, okay, well, can you imagine somebody told this person, told this person, told this person, and you think that they're going to get 100% right of what the Buddha said? It doesn't work that way. No. And what's important is the examination of the basic premises and doctrine which the Buddha was presenting during the Buddha's lifetime, and looking at this. And then we begin to see things. And it's very interesting, because as we begin to see this way, and we leave the idea of the realm of samsara, touching the infinite is immeasurable. It is beyond any conception. So the words themselves, or reaching nirvana, doesn't get you there. You're still within samsara, and to an extent, in that there's not a complete enlightenment there. And Mahayana was talking about that. Even in Mahayana, the Tibetans are going, to the Chan people, you talk about complete enlightenment, but you're not really there, because they're looking at it in their way, but they are neither wrong nor right. It is just simply they're saying, be careful about how we talk about these things and how we present it. And that's what's important. So you have to look at it. And when you see it, that's why great pains were made with this very opening volley from the 8,000 line sutra to work against the Theravadins. Of course, the Theravadins pushed back. And so as a result of that, subsequent sutras then presented stronger arguments against the Theravadins, because they were pushing back and saying this is heretical, that this is not really what the Buddha taught. But it isn't in that way. So I do invite you to look historically more into that, and you'll see that it is something that it took me years to study and to challenge from a viewpoint, a historical viewpoint, and a philosophical viewpoint, and the development of the doctrine, so that I could say what I'm saying now, not just simply from reading something from one source, but from many, many sources, and from my own experiences. So I think your question is a very, very good one. And I think it's something that should spur you into looking into it deeper. Okay. And then you make your judgment on it. Any other questions? We have time for one or two more. Shloka, okay.
Hi, Gilbert. Thank you for bringing us teachings week after week. I just attended, there was this Women of Wisdom Summit by Lion's Roar this weekend. And so I actually just found out about the patriarchy that existed in Buddhism. And it was really, it didn't make sense. And I thought, how does this make sense? And I wanted to ask about it, but I think you touched upon it today in that it's the earlier interpretation of the teachings were probably misunderstood until Mahayana came along.
Yeah, I was only able to hear some of it. You were breaking up on my side a little bit. But I think it's a matter of that, a sincere examination of things. This is very, very important that we look at it not from us against them type of a thing, but we look at it for a deeper, profound wisdom that's there, that goes beyond some kind of a samsaric understanding. We have to use our heart to do that. This is something that you have in abundance, is this heart. And so whenever you read this, whenever you explore this and look at the differences or whatever, use your heart. Use your heart to feel what was the message that these wonderful bodhisattvas that had written these sutras, what did they want to convey? And you bring them to life. They will come and they will demonstrate this for you. And that's kind of inconceivable, but it does happen. You just have to it's kind of like the Christians that say, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find it. It is in this way that you ask sincerely and you seek sincerely, and it will be there. All you have to do is just listen with your heart. And sometimes people listen too much with their mind or their intellect, and it's not there. The ones that truly can get this and they can do it, it is from their heart. I can't express that strongly enough that it comes from there. It doesn't mean that you don't read. You read and you read it and you study, but you feel what is being said. You try to put yourself, what was this that they wanted to tell me? What is this? And so there's more listening than words. So you listen with your heart and it will go through. And the ones here, and I'm seeing all the pictures of the people that are present, and the people that are here, I can see a lot of them that do that. They listen from their heart. And so this is something that is important. If you study in this way, you won't be far from it. Hopefully I answered your question. I'm not sure. Anything more? Oh, we're moving on now.
Hi, Gilbert.
Hello.
Hey, thank you for your talk. Gilbert, I want to ask you something. Have you heard of because you keep telling us to stay calm and peaceful and sublime. I think that's really important to be aware. I just thought about David Hawkins. The consciousness level. Do you know about that?
Say the word again. What?
David Hawkins.
Sadie
David
Hawkins?
Hawkins. Yeah, David. David Hawkins. Okay.
David Hawkins.
David Hawkins.
Hawkins.
Yeah, my
Okay.
earphone probably does. David Hawkins, and he's a psychiatrist, and he developed this like the consciousness level, the chart, like the highest, level is with the highest frequency of a consciousness. Yes, David Hawkins.
Okay.
Is enlightenment, and the lowest one is the shame. Shame is like 20 or 40. But the highest one is 1,000, is enlightenment. But I just noticed the chart and the peace is right below the enlightenment. So I was just thinking about, you just keep teaching us, like, to stay peaceful and calm. But between the peace and the lowest level, there are many levels. From starting the lowest, starting from shame to guilt to, to hatred, remorse. And then you have the inner love, you have the gratitude, and you keep moving up to peace and enlightenment. Do you think it's possible to stay in peace for a long time without getting rid of other lower, levels of emotions or consciousness? I mean, because we want to stay in that peace for a long time, and that's the problem. So, I mean, I was thinking about the gradual enlightenment, awakening versus the sudden one. I believe you stay in peace for a long time, you are the closest to enlightenment. But you have so many steps to move on, like according to the chart. I just don't know what you think.
Well, this is what we would call a heterodox practice. It's outside of Buddhism, and it's sometimes a combination of different kinds of things where this person, because he doesn't have a Buddhist background,
he's a Christian. Yeah, he's a Christian.
Yeah, they try to build it within their own background, kind of like the ancient Meister Eckhart did a long time ago. But there's limitations to it in terms of how they can do it, based on the fact that they ultimately have to reach a Godhead to do that. So all of this is still samsaric, and it's just trying to make the baby stop crying, but it doesn't reach a level of this deep wisdom. This is still samsaric wisdom. It's not bad, because you can become a very good citizen here in the samsaric world, but there's no escape, because the goal is not this idea of this enlightenment where all of the these sensations or skandha or whatever disappear. That's why in this 8,000 line sutra, great care was made to say that there was no duality to any of that. All of that stuff still remains within mind. And so in terms of looking at things in this way, it's different. When we all of these things, and believe me, I mean, I could become a very good Christian pastor, and say the things that people would really like and understand it and do that. But it would still be in samsara. The reason I study the Buddhism is that it made sense to me. It works, and it has paid off, and it's brought peace to many people in terms of this. When we start working on these different levels and different things, it isn't bad. But again, this is like building a stairway to heaven. And you try to work your way up and up this ladder and say, what level am I at? Am I on level 12 now, or level 13, 14? You keep going up and up and up, until you get the final ribbon. But even so, you're still in samsara. And so it's different. Somebody had done that on mind work and talked about Eckhart Tolle, you know,
Right.
and so that's, you know, again, those kinds of things are just combination of things, you know, and kind of a hodgepodge of different things that come together that are very marketable. And so it's better to study the sutras. In my heart, in terms of telling you, it would be like you are looking at Swarovski crystals. You know, those crystals that
Yes.
different colors, but they're not real gems. They're not the diamonds. They're not real diamonds.
Yeah.
They just look like diamonds. And it's better for you to go to the Diamond Sutra and to see what is incredibly precious, the most incredible precious ones there. So don't set yourself here. Challenge yourself to go further. Really challenge yourself to get this. You've already expended a lot of energy looking at this stuff here. And then when you look at this, you just go, my gosh, you know, these are just Swarovski crystals. They're not the real thing. But listen to this. This is amazing. And so when you practice that sincerely, oh my gosh, it changes everything dramatically. All of a sudden, you're able to see through this very, very clearly. And this diamond, you just keep turning it and turning it, and all the facets reflect mind. It's very, very amazing. So I would suggest you do that. I just looked them up while you were talking to me, and I see his different levels of from shame to
Yes.
guilt to apathy, et cetera. And you know,
yeah, non-duality, there's one.
and so the thing is that you're better practicing this. This is where your roots are at. And you're by virtue of you studying like this, you will see, you know, give it time, you will see that you're going to be able to penetrate much deeper. You know, I've been saying that I'm the richest man in the world, and I say that not as an egotistical way, but simply by seeing that the Dharma is so incredibly rich beyond any kind of material wealth, that no matter what, come what may, whether I have money, I don't have money, I have health, I don't have health, I always have the Dharma, and that is precious, and that's what I do to pass on to others, just like Shifu did. The very first retreat I went to, I saw Shifu, and he was passing these precious jewels out to anybody who would listen to it. And I was just there picking them up, so I could share them with everybody else. It is in this way. So don't sell yourself cheap, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Practice hard. You'll get it because you have a sincerity to your practice, okay? Okay. And stay away from Eckhart Tolle. Or Deepak Chopra. I didn't say his name, I don't think, but anyway, you know, study the true Dharma, and you'll get there. All right. Okay, I think that's it. We ran a little bit over, but that's fine. I thank you all for attending. We're going to continue on with this for next week. I think it was very good because this particular sutra is like showing you the beginning of where I've been teaching from, and then now we're coming back and saying this is it in its burgeoning coming out party, which was the 8,000 line sutra. So it's absolutely fascinating to look at things like this and then see it, and it will help you build a foundation for the subsequent sutras that came after that, and the Prajnaparamita sutras, all the Vaipula sutras, and the Tathagata Garbha sutras. So anyway, stay tuned. Okay, thank you very much for attending.